I've been working on another door for the house, and I need a set of hinges for it, and these are going to be a forge welded angle, so it'll be an L hinge. And Janet doesn't know it yet, but she did the forge welds. I mean, she knows she did these welds, she just doesn't know they're going to be on the hinge. This is a project Janet was working on many years ago and never got it finished. But she did all these sample forge welds and even demonstrated forge welding at a Rocky Mountain Smiths event in preparation for this. So I'm going to use some of her welds that aren't doing anything right now, and this will become the hinge. This part will go on the vertical stile of the door, and this part will go on the lower rail or upper rail, depending on the orientation of the hinge. Now the project Janet was working on, you may have seen it hanging on the wall there, were actually going to be some doors for a little cabinet. And the door frames are done. One of these days maybe I'll go ahead and build the cabinet and finish this project for her. She's so busy weaving these days, she doesn't do any blacksmithing and hasn't for quite some time. So she probably won't even realize that we're using her work to create these hinges. But since the door is something she wanted, this seemed to be a perfect opportunity to surprise her by using these. Now, these are about 29 inches long right now. It's a 3-foot wide door, so I think this is way more material than I really need for that. And I'm going to put a taper in this, so we're going to have to kind of see where that goes. And right here we have 9 inches. Again, I'm going to taper it so it's going to get taller. And these will go on the door, one at the top, one at the bottom. But I thought we would get started today tapering this out and then doing the forge welded finials. So there's going to be more forge welding involved. You haven't missed all the forge welding, just because Janet did some of it for us. The end of one of these was previously scarfed for the next corner weld, and I want to cut these off so they're the same length and square before I taper them. Yes, this would absolutely have been easier to draw these out before the forge weld was done. But since I'm starting with something that was done as a practice piece for forge welding, the corner already exists, so I'm going to make use of it. I want to draw this out to about a 1/2 inch wide, and I'm going to leave it a little bit thick for now. That way I can finish thinning it out after I do the forge weld. Ultimately, I want the center line of both tapered legs to be square, not the outside corner to be square. With the straps drawn out, it's time to turn my attention to the finial ends. And this hook that I've made here was actually a test piece for these hinges. So this is the finial style that I'm going for on these hinges. The little scroll element on the end is done out of 1/4 inch round bar. So what is that, 6mm round bar. And then it's got a little collar on here that kind of serves to add some extra detail as well as hiding the scarf line from the forge weld if that shows. Collar is really kind of optional. It doesn't hold anything together. It's just an added element. I've cut 4 pieces of the 1/4 inch bar, about 8 inches long. I'm going to draw out both ends into a round taper. Working these lightly down into a black heat helps really smooth out the edge and get some of the scale knocked off. You're not doing any heavy forging at these lower heats. Now the ends of this round bar are different lengths. I don't want to bend this right in the middle. I'm going to make about a 1 inch offset here. So these drew out to about 10 inches. So I'll go 4.5 inches from one end, which is 5.5 from the other. Now I'll nick this on the Hardy just so I make sure I bend it in the right place. And this is where the induction forge really comes in handy. You can absolutely do this without an induction forge. You can do this entire project in a solid fuel forge with charcoal, coal, coke, whatever you want to burn. You can do all of this in a gas forge, although there's some other tricks to welding in a gas forge. You might need to tack weld things together so they stay put while they're heating in the gas forge. But it's all completely possible regardless of what kind of forge you're using. First thing I want to do is just lightly weld the two sides of the bar together and then put a scarf in it to prepare it for welding to the hinge strap itself. Both pieces will need to be heated and fluxed lightly. I'm really enjoying doing the forge welding in the induction forge. Like I say, you can do all this in a coal forge or a gas forge. Or if you had to, you could use a torch or TIG weld or something like that and you get the same effect for the piece. But one of the things I like about the induction forge is that if the pieces fit and will come back out of the coils, I can put them in the coils and actually kind of squish them together lightly with just a little bit of pressure and get essentially a tack weld on there, so I don't have to do a drop tongs weld at the anvil. This is all ready to go as it comes out of the induction coil, and I don't have to line them up again at welding heat. Light rapid blows are all that's necessary. This is not a big heavy weld. You're not making some big Damascus billet or anything like that. This is fairly simple welding, and it's fairly relaxed forge welding. As I do more of this kind of work, I find I'm really enjoying these welded elements because it is more relaxed and it's not the heavy welding that I would be doing for an axe or something like that. And it's really kind of a pleasant job. But with the finial welded on, I'm not going to worry about shaping it at this point. I just wanted it on there. And now I'm going to go on to working on the eye. I'm going to bend that in the vise and kind of get it established. This again will be a forge welded eye. It gets wrapped back on itself. Once it's wrapped, but before welding, I want to go ahead and put the pin in and make sure the eye is the correct size before I weld it. And you don't want to work too much in one spot as you're shaping the eye, or you'll end up with little flat spots. You want to work all around the eye as much as it's possible. Once that fits, I'm going to weld right up next to the eye. I'm not trying to weld the entire thing. I'm going to need this to split open again. And I'm going to put the pin back in because inevitably the eye gets a little bit out of shape. But the more you do to keep it refined in the right shape each heat, the more likely it's going to come out correct in the long run. On the strap, the eye is going to be a T-weld, and this will need a little bit of a scarf pulled out of the side of the strap. The eye was just forged on the end of the strap, and with that cut off, I'm going to put it in the vise and open that split up down to where I did that previous forge weld. Be a little gentle here. If that weld hasn't been well refined, you could split the weld wide open. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's nice if you don't. Little bridge tool makes it easier to draw this out. You do need a scarf, and end up with a shoulder forged into your piece that makes it weaker. So your weld blends much better if you've got scarves on everything. And that eye goes on both sides of the strap, so this is a pretty strong weld. There's a lot of material being welded here. A lot of surface area. A little bit of flux. A lot of that falls off. It looks like way more flux than you need, but most of it kind of falls off before you get to the welding process. Then again, I'm doing all this in the induction forge. This eye is a little hard to get in there and get the whole thing hot evenly, so I have to take several heats to get it done, but it can be done that way. Just a matter of finding the right surface to work on so that you can get around the three different angles you're working with here. The pintles are done the same way. I don't show all of that because it just all looks exactly the same. Just depends on which strap you're working on. Now the collars are just 1/8 by 1/2 inch material, and I've cut them appropriate size to go around the end where that finial is, and make the first bend in the vise. And you can do all this bending cold. This is thin enough material, you don't have to do this hot. Way easier to handle cold. But then I just go ahead and bend it right around the strap where I want it, and that way I'm sure it's the right size. If the straps vary in width a little bit, it's really not going to matter. And we're back to the induction forge. I'm going to move that out of the way to make sure I get a little bit of flux underneath where the collar goes. Another thing nice about the induction forge is you can really see what's going on, and there's less risk of accidentally losing that collar in a coal fire, or if it shifts or moves, you'll be aware of it. And a gas forge, of course, would heat up a whole lot more material than you really need hot to get this little tiny weld. There again, an alternative without forge welding would be to get the collar to fit good and tight, and then just TIG weld it or torch weld it at the backside where it won't show, and it would really look exactly the same in the finished piece. But I do prefer the forge weld whenever it's practical. Again, light, rapid blows. Let me give it a little light wire brushing and go back and take another welding heat on this. Oh, it looks like I didn't show the other welding heat, but the pintles were forged a little bit long. I wanted to line everything up and then cut it off. I'm just going to put a little upset on the other end. This only has the scroll on one end of the pintle. Make more sense when you see them installed. And we will get to installing these before the end of the video. Again, trying to work around that hinge eye can be a little bit of a problem. The last thing I want to do to the straps themselves is put a little bit of a forged bevel on them, just to make them look a little bit better refined. I do not have a pair of tongs ideal for holding that odd corner there, so this gets a little bit tough to hold on to. For this, I'm actually heating in the gas forge so I can get a longer heat. Have the bevel down on the face of the anvil, and that way I can work from the back, and it creates a little bit cleaner bevel than doing it all from the front. I want to guarantee that my hinge eyes are exactly the size that I want them, so I'm going to run a drill bit through there. I'm putting a big countersink on the back so I can weld the pin in. I'm going to go ahead and just TIG weld this in. You could forge weld it, but there's a real risk of screwing up your eye and the pin getting crooked and all that kind of stuff if you forge weld it in. So I think this is a really good place for a TIG weld or a torch weld or MIG, whatever it is you got, I think works just fine. But I do want to kind of camouflage that little bit of electrical welding and make sure I've got a good shoulder at that pin. So I'm going to put it in a monkey tool that's held upright in the vise. And just put a little bit of a head on there and make it look a little bit more refined. Hinge strap also needs to be drilled out. And just lightly countersunk here just to make sure there's no sharp edges that are going to create a wear point on the hinge. And get a good snug fit here. And this is really what you want. You don't want it to just slide together easily at this point because it is going to wear in over time. Now, unfortunately, these doors are offset from the trim on the outside of the door, the casing on the door, and I need to put about a 3/4 inch offset in this hinge eye. Now we're back to the finial ends. I can go ahead and finish these now. I'm going to start by putting a little chiseled groove in the collar. This is purely ornamental, doesn't serve a functional purpose, it just makes the collar look more elegant. Heck, the whole finial doesn't serve a functional purpose, it's all about aesthetics at this point. I'm using a chisel not because I'm trying to cut anything, but just because it's a nice way to spread these apart. A little bick in the anvil is nice for doing this scrolling, but I will rely heavily on a little pair of round nose pliers and a small scrolling fork. I already have one of these done, and my goal is to make all of these ends match. There's a total of 6 little scrolled finials between the 2 hinges. This does take some time. It's not just a real quick process. I suppose if I were making big batches of these, I could build some sort of a bending jig for this. But it's really more enjoyable to just take your time and enjoy the process at the anvil, especially when these are not for sale. This is just for me, and I want to enjoy the process. Getting really close there. And now it's time to go ahead and drill some holes. I'm drilling for a number 8 round wood screw. I like the looks of the raised screw on these hinges. It gives kind of a rivet-like appearance. And final thing is a little bit of paste wax. Lots of different paste wax on the market. This forge finish from ZH Fabrication has worked very well, but some other people have sent me some blacksmithing specific paste waxes they've developed, and they all work just fine. Now it's time to do the install. So here's the screen door in the house. And I want to line up the eye is the most important thing. If you get the hinge perfectly aligned but the eye's a little crooked, your door's not going to run right. So you either have to go back and reshape the corner of the hinge if it doesn't line up the way you want, or live with it the way it is if it's not too far off. But the big thing is getting that eye straight in line, and that's what the dowel in the eye was for. it gives me a reference to look at. And make sure that both the top and bottom hinge are then aligned the same. Now my screws are commercially available wood screws that have been given an acid bath to remove the zinc plating and then heated in the forge and waxed just like the hinges. And I use slotted head screws because I think they look a lot better. The final assembly, the door is wedged into place with shims to get my reveals all the way I want them. And then the pintles are put on, making sure that they are pulled tight or kind of preloaded in the opposite direction of where the door is going to put stress. And then make sure the door doesn't sag. Again, functionality is the highest priority there. And once the door is in, I can pull all my shims out and see if it actually works. And it does.
Well, you be the first one through.
Well, it's a nice, smooth running set of hinges. Adds a bit of class to the door. Purely unnecessary to put that much hinge on a screen door, but I really think it's worth it to express yourself by adding those extra touches, especially for things that you're going to keep yourself and you don't have to worry about a customer at the other end of the job. I want to thank everybody for watching the video and give a special thanks to my channel members and my Patreon patrons. Channel members receive early access to the videos, and Patreon patrons not only receive early access, but they receive the videos ad-free over on Patreon. For everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.